Hello. Hi, I am Audrey Wenning, Director of Transportation for the Metropolitan Planning Council, and we're so happy to have you here with us today. MPC is an independent nonprofit organization that works to advance the sustainability, equity, and prosperity of the Greater Chicago region. To make sure we can all engage easily, I want to go over a few housekeeping points briefly. We've enabled the chat and Q&A functions here on Zoom. You can find them both in the bottom portion of your screen. We ask that you use the chat box throughout the session to share your thoughts with us or to get my attention about something. We also encourage you to use the Q&A function to post any questions so that we can easily access them. We've used the questions that were submitted during registration to craft a few guiding questions for this conversation. After we ask some of those initial questions, we'll open up the floor for live questions for all of you in the audience. Please share your questions with us in the Q&A function to make sure your question gets asked. This event also features live closed captioning in English and Spanish. So please click closed captions here in Zoom to turn the English captions on and off. You can also access them and the Spanish captions in a separate window by following the link shared in this chat. Para acceso a los subtítulos en español, por favor, siga el enlace que compartimos ahora. Morgan will share the link now. We also want to note that this event is being recorded. We'll share a link to the recording and any relevant resources in a follow-up email, so keep an eye out for that. And finally, we at MPC and in Chicago wanted to say that we stand in solidarity with peaceful protesters worldwide, especially those harmed or lost in Colombia over the last few weeks. We recognize the fight for justice, equity, and effective governance is fought in communities around the globe, and we at MPC continue to support this cause and to work towards a more equitable, prosperous, and sustainable future for those in Chicago's metropolitan region and support those in communities around the world. Now let's get started seeing firsthand how city-to-city connections between local leaders can teach and inspire us and lead to impact. We want to first thank our partner sponsors for this virtual event, HDR, which is an employee-owned design firm that specializes in engineering, architecture, environmental, and construction services, and Divvy, Chicagoland's bike sharing service that provides a fun and affordable way to get around Chicago and Evanston. Now I'm pleased to introduce our moderator, Linda Lopez, who is a writer and transportation advocate in Chicago. She serves as advocacy manager with Active Transportation Alliance and recently co-authored a report on transit fare equity in the Chicagoland region. She's also co-chair of the Chicago Transportation Equity Network. On the national level, Linda is a core organizer with the Untokening, a multiracial collective centering on the lived experiences of marginalized communities to address mobility, justice, and equity. Thank you, Linda, for being with us, and we look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Audrey. Excited to be here today on World Bicycle Day. So before we get started, I'll be offering some remarks, but I wanted to make sure to introduce our panelists, which you'll be speaking from very shortly. First of all, we have Fatal Perkins. Fatal is the founder of Think Outside the Block, a nonprofit whose mission is to expose disadvantaged youth to a better quality of life and build community. Think Outside the Block hosts 5 annual events, but of the 5, Roll in Peace, the nighttime community bike tour, has been the most impactful and successful. Ivan de la Lanza is from the Sewer Institute. He's a sustainable urban mobility specialist in Mexico City. He was also the director of culture, design, and cycling infrastructure in the Ministry of Environment of the Mexico City government, where he was in charge of planning, design, and implementation of 40 kilometers of cycling infrastructure, 2 massive bike hubs, the Open Street program, and EcoBC, the largest bike sharing system in Latin America. And lastly, we have Rodrigo Sandoval, Chief of Communications for the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Sports in Bogota, Colombia. A journalist from Colombia with 10+ years of experience. He has worked for national and regional organizations on strategic communications, advocacy, fundraising, and public policy. He's openly gay and has led activism to create safer environments for LGBTI plus communities in Bogota. So I'm excited that we're gonna have a wonderful panel. And before we transition into their presentations, I wanted to offer some context and speak a little bit more about my experience in biking, and hopefully have some grounding perspectives for the event that we're gonna be having today. So I was particularly excited today to have speakers from Chicago and Latin America, a region that I think could offer a lot of insight into biking in this city and country. It is also exciting to have the perspectives from Spanish-speaking countries, which are often not centered in conversations around biking. I'll always say my most idyllic biking locale is my grandma's small Mexican town in Michoacan. And I think that's part of why gathering today is important. When we're able to glimpse bike cultures in other parts of the world, it expands our ideas and taps into potential for change. And I think we're all here for different reasons, but I'm sure that we all share the commonality of seeing the value in biking in one way or another. I learned how to bike as a young child and started bike commuting after high school. As I get older and navigate different roles and responsibilities, I often wonder where my bike fits into my future. Stories like the one of Kevin Clark, a 32-year-old man famous for his role in the movie School of Rock, being killed while riding his bike on a street in Logan Square, can play a role in spurring more organizing for better bike infrastructure. And it can also scare people away from biking. Whenever a cyclist dies on the streets of Chicago, my mom texts me, "Be careful." There is an added weight in deciding to ride a bike in our city. I think a good question to ask today is what it looks like to demand better on our streets for people on bikes. In 2012, the Chicago Department of Transportation released the Streets for Cycling 2020 plan to guide the development of a comprehensive network of bikeways to encourage people of all ages and abilities to ride a bike. The cycling plan envisioned a 645-mile network throughout all of Chicago's neighborhoods by 2020. Today, Chicago has about 357 miles of bike lanes, but only 25 of those miles feature infrastructure that physically separates people biking from car and truck traffic. Streets like Milwaukee Avenue on the north side have the highest quality protected bike lanes, while residents on the southwest side have none on streets like Archer Avenue. The reality of the data manifests in inequities throughout the city. There's much work to be done to realize the vision where people can safely bike in our city's streets. And I hope that learning from perspectives from across the world, it'll spark ideas from what we can do differently. I love biking, it makes me happy, but it can also fill me with fear. I wonder what it looks like to have mobility without so much fear of the implications of riding on a certain streets. I also hope for a day where Black and brown neighborhoods are prioritized in getting infrastructure improvements and access to biking. And I'm sure our first speaker, Feital, can speak much more about his vision for biking in Chicago and his community. So I'll now hand it over to Feital to get us started.
Thank you, Linda. So good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate even being asked to be on this panel. Thanks for everyone who made this event possible. I first want to just start off saying I am the founder of Think Outside the Block. Think Outside the Block started in 2016. Our mission is to expose disadvantaged youth to a better quality of life and build community. We've been able to partner with over 86 businesses, community organizations, as well as community groups all across the country. Rolling Peace is the event actually that has had the most success out of all of the events that we organize. And we run a program called Get Your Mind Right, which is a trauma awareness series where we work with youth between the ages of 18 to 24 to basically expose them to the traumas that our community face that's typically deemed as normal. And so before we continue, I really want to get into Rolling Peace. I want to show you guys a video before I speak further about it.
We don't have anything to be ashamed of. Somebody told a lie one day. They couched it in language. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. Look in your dictionary and see the synonyms of the word black. I want to get the language so right that everybody here will cry out, yes, I'm black, I'm proud of it, I'm black and beautiful.
When I'm rolling peace, there's a future right here. There's a future right here.
And so the video that you all just watched, that was Rolling Peace 5, which actually we planned in 10 days. So coming off of the murder of George Floyd and all of the tension that not only lied in our community, Inglewood or the city of Chicago, but all across the country, as well as people kind of being locked up due to COVID-19, people were just ready to get out. People were frustrated. And while initially Rolling Peace was canceled, I decided on June the 10th that we needed to move forward with Rolling Peace. And so we planned it for June 19th, and then June 11th, we got to work. And actually Rolling Peace 5 was our largest turnout ever. And so we had over 1,000 participants that actually showed up to do that particular ride. And so just thinking about cycling and what Rolling Peace does, as it decreases violence through community presence, increases physical fitness with exercise and mobility, and improves emotional, psychological, and social well-being through intentional community engagement. Just really thinking back to 2018 when I initially started and had this idea to just kind of bring people together, regardless of their ethnic backgrounds, their gender, social status, age, religious belief, tax brackets, what side of the city they lived on, or any of the things that typically divides us as people. And so I really just kind of channeled back to a time when I was a child, and it just wasn't a care in the world. And to think about me and my friends just kind of riding our bikes and just having fun, I just had this idea of like, what if I could form this event to bring so many different people together and just form a sense of community. And so we did that. We tried it out, but initially there were concerns of safety. There were concerns of safety as far as riding the street, safety as far as the violence and the narrative that has previously been created around the Inglewood community. But I was determined to try it anyway. And so after our first ride, we had a little bit over 200 people that was in attendance, and then there was just this demand for it to happen again. And so now we do it twice a year. And we're currently up to Rolling Peace 7, which will happen in a couple of weeks on June 19th at Ogden Park in the greater Inglewood community. And so just thinking about after Rolling Peace and how I joined the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Council, and just thinking about the different things that kind of the challenges and the barriers that we have, not only in Inglewood, but all across the city, thinking about the representation of when different laws and policies are being discussed and passed, making sure that there's representation from all across the city, because different areas of the city of policies being passed affects different areas in the city differently. And just thinking, I know here in Inglewood, we have 5 different aldermen. So literally on one side of the street is one ward, and the opposite side of the street could be another ward. So it's challenging if the 2 aldermen aren't on the same page. And when it comes to making decisions like creating bike lanes, like that could literally be a bike lane on one block and you go to the next block and then the bike lanes just go away. So when I began just kind of, organizing around cycling and getting people to cycle, I learned the challenges of just people just being afraid and needing to create a safe environment around how it looks for people to ride in the street where bike lanes aren't present, as well as the narrative that has been created in my community, and I'm sure other communities around just safety and just being on bikes and being able to mobilize through the community. And so with that being said, if there's any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that video. Just seeing, I don't know, the euphoria of seeing a lot of people on bikes, especially like in Black and brown neighborhoods, which often aren't featured on, I think, dominant ideas around biking. So I really enjoyed that video. That was great. I did have one question before we move on to our next presenter. I'm just curious a little to hear more about how you see biking as an avenue for social change in your community. It seems like you've been really dedicated to this event annually. And I think when you speak about Englewood there, it seems like you speak a lot to wanting to change perceptions. So I'm just curious to learn a little bit more about how does biking fit into your vision for your neighborhood?
Well, I know that you'll hear people say things like Black people don't ride bikes, or just you'll hear some people who think that bikes are for kids, or you'll hear different just opinions from different individuals, right? But I found that just by organizing Roll in Peace, we've been able to change the narrative alone about Inglewood. There are so many people who told me that Roll in Peace was their first time visiting Inglewood, and it wasn't as bad as they heard or they thought. And to even be riding through the greater Inglewood community at 8 p.m. at night really shows that we're doing some, we're changing some things. There was after Roll in Peace 2, the commander from the 7th district reported out to the mayor's office that every time we've done Roll in Peace, that there's been 0 reports of violent crimes in the entire district the day of the ride. And so this was a stat at the time that we weren't even looking for or thinking about. But moving forward, we have been able to get these same results. And so outside of that, there's a lot of people who said that Roll in Peace was the first time they had a positive interaction with law enforcement. We've been able to teach our youth skills to be able to provide, in hopes of providing an opportunity for them to be able to get a job or create currency. The opportunity just for people to be able to meet one another that's just that normally wouldn't talk or normally wouldn't see one another or normally wouldn't be in a place to have a conversation, to be able to meet and build relationships. We've been able to deter the violence. Every ride, I actually go out and create the route to go through the areas that experience the most violence in the community. So when we're going through those areas and that community presence is there, it actually has been played a major part in deterring the violence in those specific areas. And ultimately, just creating and helping people live a healthier lifestyle. We all know cycling, is exercise, as well as giving them tips on just eating and eating healthier. And so hopefully we're able to just get some more support, show people that cycling is just a major key to our overall health.
Great, thank you so much. And we'll be able to hear more from you a little later during our Q&A. So next up, we're gonna transition to our next presenter, Ivan de la Lanza.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Linda. Thank you. Thank you very much for this invitation. So let me just share my screen very briefly. I would like to point some of the technical points for this conversation. So before I start, thank you very much, and especially happy Bike Day for everyone. Especially thanks to Metropolitan Planning Council for the invitation, and especially thanks for the Latin community for this event. Hope to have this conversation. So let's get started. And I would like to start with this point, which is what's the phase that we are challenging in the world. So this is part of the challenge we face on climate change, and especially with COVID-19 now, because already half of the population is living in cities. So that figure is set to increase to 70% by 2050. So of course, all the negative externalities associated with private motorized transport will increase as well. And decisions that we will take now will determine whether cities can grow while improving citizens' quality of life, or perpetuate a cycle of low productivity, poverty, and environmental degradation. So this is why this is very, very important for our future and for the vision that we are trying to build around transport. So what's the important and the technical feasible scenarios to reduce emissions in cities by 2050? So what's the role of transport in this? So we know that cities can reduce 90% of their emissions with measures that are technically feasible today, that maybe they don't want to do it, but it's technically feasible. And especially with transport, it's almost 1/4 of the potential coming for reductions on emissions on the transport sector. So also transportation contributes to 70% of all urban air pollution. And especially with COVID-19, researchers shows that air pollution contributes to a 50% increase of the death rate for COVID-19. So this is why it's so more important to create livable communities with a good air quality in our neighborhoods. So what's the future scenarios for urban mobility as well? This is very, very important. So as well, daily trips in urban areas will increase by 50%. And we have two possible scenarios to take on this. So the first one is very negative and is to keep on doing business as usual. And this will come with a negative shift from walking and cycling to more private motorized vehicles. And public transit or transit trips will increase by 30%, while private motorized motorized trips increase by 80%. So this will be very negative, and this will definitely not lead us to the goals that we're trying to achieve for climate change. And the second one could be a more positive scenario, which we can duplicate the trips on public transport and transit, duplicate the modal share of transit worldwide while increasing also as well modal share of walking and cycling, and keep the number of trips made by private cars actually, or private vehicles in general, at its current level. So ensuring all extra mobility would be provided by sustainable modes of transport. So in this positive vision, also the global outlook for walking and cycling, it's around road safety. So the big problem is road safety. We know that between 20 to 65% of all the trips around the world rely on walking and cycling. So this is not actually, when we look at these numbers in the world, we know that this is not an alternative mobility solution for everyone. It's actually the only solution, especially for the global south. So a lot of more people actually begin or end by walking or cycling. And we know that active transport in general provides a huge range of benefits, especially related to sustainable development goals, environmental, economic, health. But unfortunately, many people risk or lose their lives while traveling. So actually, this is the real pandemic that we are facing since the last 20 years. So more than 1.3 million people are killed on the roads each year, only to go to work, only to go to school. So this is very unequal for the access for the city. So in our resume, we know that active mobility is actually a fundamental element for sustainable mobility. It's a way to provide sustainable and health access to the city and its service and opportunities, especially education, health, development. And it's a way to reduce inequality of access that actually more of the cities, Mexico City, Colombian cities, Brazilian cities, Latin American cities especially, are very unequal on their access to the city, to the public space, to the distribution. And this is providing active mobility also could provide a huge range of benefits. So let me talk about Mexico City, so my city. I would like to quote an Italian author, which is Italo Calvino. And in the book of Invisible Cities, he said something like, there are two types of cities, the ones which through the years and mutations keep on shaping the desires, and those in which the desires achieve to erase the city or are erased by it. So this is very important in the way that we are trying to build, as Patal was saying, the vision for the cities. So what's the vision that we are trying to achieve? So in the graded numbers, maybe you know this, but it's good to have a view on this. We are 22 million of inhabitants in the greater Mexico City zone, 35 million trips every day, 9.2 million in this central blue zone. And we have, the statistics shows that we have more vehicles than people actually. Sometimes it's 7.4 million of private vehicles. So of course we have a very huge negative externalities on this, $10 billion annually lost on economical losses. And the average commute by car is around 4 hours. So it is very painful for the city and for the citizens. So even if we can see that there's a lot of traffic congestion, there's not so many trips by car actually. So this is a way to reflect the unequal cities, because we can see that 45% of trips are made by public transport. 32%, this is very special, 32% is made by walking only, 20% by private vehicles, including not only private cars, but as well like private motorcycles, and 2.1% on bikes. And the average trip distance is 9 kilometers, which is 5.5 miles. And this is very, very interesting. According to the Household Travel Survey for United States cities, nearly 60% of car trips in the United States are under 5 miles. So this is very important. This is how we can achieve active mobility and transit mobility with intermodality trips. So I just want to remark how mobility could be a symbol of unequal access to city. So this is a very interesting study that reflects how the people who live in the central zone of the city have more access, not only to mobility, but as well for jobs, for education. So people who live in this green zone in Mexico City has 20 times more access to formal jobs. So this is the way how mobility could be, and in some of the cities that we live, it's a symbol of unequal access into our cities. So in Mexico City, around 15 years ago, we built the bicycle mobility strategy. So it was very interesting because it's a very technical and analytical process for this. And it relies on three main pillars, which are cultural and educational programs, open street programs, and bike schools. The second one is infrastructure and equipment. So it is basically bike lanes and bike hubs network. And the third one is the bike sharing program, Ecobici, which is one of the largest in Latin America. It's the largest in Latin America, and one of the largest in the world, and it's integrated to public transport. So the Open Street program, it's how we can reopening the city to Mexican citizens. Before COVID, because this was actually a previous situation, we have 50,000 people attending in 55 kilometers. So it was very, very interesting process every Sunday. The bicycle networks is very, very important, because not only for the daily trips, but as well because it has been a very, very important part for the resilience and for the future in the city. So bike lanes has been life lanes in the cities that connect not only with public transport, but especially with development and opportunities, especially for the event of the last huge earthquake that we have in 2017. The only way to move around, it was by biking and on the bike lanes. And then we have the bike sharing program. So as I was saying, it's the largest in Latin America and one of the largest in the world. And this was really unbelievable, like 10 years ago, to having one of the largest bike sharing system, but as well to see a lot of different people riding a bike on this kind of bike sharing system. And also we have the massive bike hub. So it's a bike hub integrated to transport network, to transport centers. So this is a space where we recover all the public space, but as well we provide a safety space for bicyclists to leave the bicycle there and they take transit. And this same space used to look like this before. So this was the very important thing to remark, that it's not only around cycling, it's especially about public spaces and how we can provide a different space. So just to remark that this process hasn't been really, wasn't easy at all, and it's still being very difficult. So a lot of people still think like bike lanes and transit take a lot of space from the street. But when you live surrounded by privilege, equity and inclusion could feel like a discrimination. And this is part of the process that we need to encourage. We need to be closer with each other and try to share common visions with each other. And especially to share the benefits that it brings. And this is a study from 2016 on C40, the benefits of climate action. And we know that these projects, Bikeability and Walkability Mexico City, has saved to the city $109 million in this period of time on a huge range of benefits, especially for health and well-being of citizens, reducing the risk of obesity and associated non-communicable diseases such as cardiovascular disease and diabetes type 2, which is a very huge problem in Mexico City and in Mexico in general. The cycling network brings benefits as well for more than $65 million, almost 6 times of the initial inversion. So this is very important for the city. And I just want to remark that this is, as the other panelist says, this is a way to create community and engage and to bring benefits. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Just one question before we transition into our next presenter. I thought that was a really interesting quote that you shared at the end, that when you're surrounded by privilege, equity and inclusion can seem like discrimination. I think that's a really poignant quote in terms of talking about like bike equity and how it can be seen as a viable choice for people. So I'm curious to hear more about your experience in Mexico City advocating for biking, and what's your experience been like trying to push further building bike culture in your city?
Well, as you said, Linda, in my presentation, I used to work for Mexico City government in the environmental department. So I was in charge of the bicycle mobility strategy for a period of time among wonderful people who have, collectively, we have the chance to create and to implement a lot of projects in Mexico City. So I think it is very, very important how this experience, especially being able to witness and to participate for maybe one of the most remarked urban mobility and social transformation within the city, and how bike culture in Mexico City also has been very powerful tool to build social participation and community engagement. It seems to me like that it's a new way to build a true participatory democracy process where people are connected with the environment, but also are connected with each other, and how we can agree, discuss, and decide the vision of our neighborhoods and our cities. So it is interesting in that way for me.
Well, thank you so much. We'll have a chance to chat a little bit more later. So our final presenter will be Rodrigo Sandoval.
Thank you, Linda. Hi, everyone. Happy Bike Day to everyone. Morgan, I think you're gonna share my screen, my slides, or should I? Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of context. Can you, yes, there you go. A little bit of context of what Bogota is and why the institution that I represent was invited to this panel. Bogota is the capital of Colombia. It has more than 8 million inhabitants. We have a wide foreign population, both from outside the city in Colombia and outside the country. It sits on a rainy plateau on the top of the Andes. We are 8,800 feet above the sea level, which is due to the altitude, oxygen is less available than most of the cities. If you ever had been to Denver or something like that, you could feel what it looks to be in Bogota. We are very close to the equator, but we're cooler than most of the cities close to the tropics due to the altitude. And we are very, very, very moist city. It rains almost every day. And I'm actually hoping for some rain later in the day. Bogota wants to be the host of the 2027 Pan American Games, and as the Parks, Recreation and Sports Institute of Bogota, we want to see you here when it happens. Linda just asked a question about how we can promote biking, and I'd said that with a lot of question marks that the easiest way is just to say that you need to get on your bike and just go. But it's not easy. It's not as easy as it sounds. I also want to say that Bogota is it's a city that lives through its bikes. There's no doubt about it. I think every single household in Colombia, and especially in Bogota, has a bike. And you probably saw Egan Bernal just win the Giro d'Italia last weekend. And it's amazing how the social movement and how the institutions have worked together for as many as 40 years to make bikes the centerpiece of our city. I also want to say that I'm proud to be the person that drafted the bill and then was very involved in the negotiation to lead to the passage of a bill through Congress in Colombia that offers incentives to people who commute on bikes. It's not as good as it can be, but at least we have it. The law creates a couple of incentives to promote bike usage. For instance, every public parking lot have to dedicate at least 10% of its land for bikes. Public servants can apply for half paid day off every 30 times they commute to work by bike. And every new road project in Colombia has to include segregated infrastructure for bikes. Next, Morgan, please. The first thing is Bogota is worldwide known for its ciclovia. As you can see on the map, the map shows on gray all the main roads in Bogota, and on color, it shows the 127.7 kilometers of open streets that we have every Sunday and holiday in the city for the last 45 years. And just think for a moment that Colombia has 18 holidays plus 52 Sundays. So it makes almost the fifth of the year we have this open streets for 2 million Bogotanos and Bogotanas who go out and bike or walk around the city. Ciclovia was born in the 70s. And next, please. As a weird experiment, none thought this could become one of the city's landscapes next. But it's probably Bogota's most important patrimony. Ciclovia is so popular that every time politicians have tried to reduce the number of days or propose a change of hours or reduce them, they have faced the steep condemnation from Bogotanos and Bogotanas. Next. Ciclovia is an important part of our culture, as I said. Next, Bogota cannot be defined without ciclovia. There is no way to imagine Bogota without a ciclovia, except, of course, for COVID. Since it brought many crowds to the streets, we had to shut it down for a couple of months last year, and again during the second peak of this pandemic in January. And it was heartbreaking because there is something very, very special about Ciclovia and how people, as Ivan was just saying, connect with each other and enjoy the city in a very different way. Ciclovia is also a way that we in Bogota celebrate the Bogota's Day every year on August the 6th, the day that the Spanish invaders created the city. We have a special night Ciclovia. It's a little smaller, just 94 kilometers and almost 4 million people out on the street. And it's fair to say that this is the biggest recreational event in Latin America. We have fireworks, we have artists, we have street food, we have a lot of things happening during this night Ciclovia to celebrate Bogota's Day. And again, since Bogotanos cannot get enough of Ciclovia, at the beginning of the Christmas season around December the 10th, we do it again, and people goes out and enjoys Christmas lighting and do a little shopping and do or hear a little bit of caroling. And, you know, it's like the perfect way to kick the Christmas season. This is the fun recreational part next, and again next, but also you have to know that in Bogota we have 600,000 to 800,000 daily commuters that use a bike as their main ride to work or school. I just said that we have around 8 million people, so this is around 10% of our commuters go to work or to school on a bike. Bogota has a network of more than 500 kilometers of segregated infrastructure for bikes, and it's building 300 more kilometers in the next 5 years. So we'll have a total of 800 kilometers of segregated infrastructure, which is almost the same distance that separates Bogota from the Caribbean coast, or around the same amount of travel that you would have to take from Chicago to Nashville. I actually Googled this, and you will have to take I-57 and I-24 to get to Chicago, from Chicago to Nashville in 800 kilometers. But it's just so you'll have a little bit of an idea of how much kilometers we have in the city. And this year we created the bike public policy, which is a guide document that include a $600 million investment on biking policy for the next 10 years, which includes the construction of a public school that will concentrate on creating new technical knowledge for bikes. We will have new bike paths. We will have research on public biking. We will have public servants working on our public policy. And we will have, finally, as Mexico City has and many other cities around the world have, a public bike sharing program. Now, how did we get there? But, well, again, there has been an incredible combination of a strong social movement to promote biking and a series of governments that have put bikes on as a top priority. And there is one main concern that I wanted to concentrate today, which is how can we close the gap between female bike usage and male bike usage? The first thing is to say that there is a somehow true stereotype that we in Latin America are very sexist. I'm going to say yes, we are. And that sexism can be seen in many different moments on a woman's life. But there's one particularly special that has to be with biking, and it's that girls do not learn how to ride a bike for many stupid reasons. I've heard things like my daughter cannot learn how to ride a bike because she will lose her virginity, or I think girls have to be quieter and more poised. So why would you need them to learn to ride a bike? So the Sports, Recreations and Parks Institute that I work for created a bike school, which is a place where people from all ages next can learn how to ride a bike. And it's especially dedicated for women. We have the bike school in many parts around the city. They work every single day except Mondays. And you can just go and use a public bike own bike to learn how to ride a bike. And also learn about transit regulation for bikes and meet new friends and, you know, kind of having a great time. But if you're a woman and next, for instance, an adult woman or an elderly woman You can also come to what we call the manzanas del cuidado, which are like care apples, which is a couple of structures around the city with parks, with a school, with a public laundry, where you can also find the bike school and learn how to ride a bike. Just last year, 2020, we had 30,000 people who learned how to ride a bike in our bike school program. Next. But sometimes when you learn how to ride a bike, and Linda was also speaking about safety and security, how can you, like get women to decide to ride a bike, to commute on bikes? We also have a program called Al Trabajo en Bici, which is bike to work, basically. And what we do with bike to work is we put together police people, and we put public servants, and we have, like a couple of people who ride together to work and back home on 2 different places in Bogota. And we have gathered, just last year, we gathered 319,000 people who rode together to work, and that makes a little sense of community, and also create new bonds, and increases trust and solidarity. This picture that you're seeing on the screen right now is a picture next to the airport. So it goes from the very outskirts of the city to downtown, and people can bike easily. Almost done, I promise. Next. Before, again, let me rephrase. So after COVID happened, we suddenly could not have many riders on our buses. Bogota is one of the few cities in the world who doesn't have trains for public transportation. We only have buses. And we needed to get people out of the buses as soon as we could. And one of the ideas that we had was, well, let's put more people on bikes. And so we created 80 kilometers of temporary bike lanes next, which were, used in some lanes and in some streets that we didn't used to have any segregated infrastructure. And this 80 kilometers is just, if you think of it, it's like if you go from the Bean to Michigan City, and just a bike lane. And guess what? We turned those 40 of those 80 kilometers already into permanent bike lanes. And of course, there's been opposition because, car owners and drivers can't imagine a world where cars are not the most important item in their households. But guess what? Only 30% of the households in Bogota own a car, but 99% households in Bogota own a bike. So we wanted to make sure that bikes had the place that they deserve during this pandemic. Next, additionally, the city has become a hotspot for international cycling events to promote high-performance athletes to be involved in the city's Olympic team. Carlos Ramirez is an Olympic medalist of BMX cycling. Bogota hosted this very past weekend the BMX World Cup. Next, and in a couple of months, we will be hosting the last round of the Vuelta a Colombia, which is the most important cycling event of the Americas. Next, Bogota also has the longest downhill circuit in the world. Next, which is the pedestrian walk down from Monserrate Hill that has 2.4 kilometers length to go down from the top of the mountain to the city limit. Next, please. And next again. And just to be finished, I wanted to remind you that we have 2 million next Ciclovia riders, between 600,000 and 800,000 bike commuters every day. And I want you all to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, IDRD. If you get the chance, come to Bogota for the 2027 Pan American Games. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rodrigo. That was really interesting. And based on the chat box, a lot of people are really inspired with what you were discussing. So before we move on to the group Q&A, I wanted to ask you a question. It seems like a lot of people are really interested in all the policies and the different strategies for increasing biking in Bogota. So I'm curious, what are and I think you mentioned some of them in your presentation. What do you think are some key things that people have to keep in mind when thinking of like wanting to replicate some of these things? For example, the Ciclovia, or in any of these other initiatives that you mentioned. What are some key lessons or key strategies that people should keep in mind? Because it is, they're different cities, different countries, there's different challenges.
I think one of the most interesting things that we had in Bogota, and I said it twice in my presentation, is the combination of a strong social movement with a government that knows the importance of biking. We, as I said, Ciclovia has happened in Bogota for 45 years, and except for COVID, there has never been a time in which we didn't have Ciclovia on Sundays. And this is a lot of money that we have to, there is a lot of money that we have to invest on Ciclovia. It's an expensive program. It's an expensive program to have the bike school. It takes a lot of effort. Ciclovia goes on streets on Sundays from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. But the logistics to get Ciclovia ready starts on Sundays at 3 a.m. and goes up until 6 or 7 p.m. So we have a lot of people working on it. We have a lot of users that go out, but the combination between the strong social movement and the strong government interest on bikes is very, very important. And voters know that. I mean, as I said, if there is a politician who would say we want to get rid of Ciclovia, he would not survive in Bogota. He or she would never, ever, ever survive in Bogota, because the social movement is strong. The people likes to go out on Ciclovia, and people uses the bike lanes. When we started building this 500 kilometers of bike lanes that we have now in Bogota, we would build it on the sidewalks, next to pedestrians. And then we realized it was a stupid idea. So we now take away one lane from cars and just dedicate to bikes, which is more intelligent, of course, but it wasn't something that happened. It didn't occur just to the people in government in Bogota. It was something that we had to learn from experience and what worked and how we could make it a better place for both pedestrian and bikers and worse for car owners.
Great, thank you so much. So we're gonna transition to bring all our panelists back so we can have a longer conversation before the end of our program. So I have a stream of questions that I could potentially start with. I did see a few questions, and I think, Rodrigo, you started to touch on this about getting more women involved in biking. And I saw a question also about like safety and also how we include children into the mix as well. So I'm curious, and this is for all of you, so anyone can jump in. How do we, or what are some strategies to get more women biking? Current ones or ideas that you have, and if you have any ideas as well about engaging children in these efforts.
Well, I'll go. So I would definitely say that just doing events and different things like I've done with Rolling Peace, I've seen that there's a lot of women who are looking to exercise that just don't mind riding bikes. So when you create a platform, I think that there's a lot of women that come out to Rolling Peace and a lot of different other rides that I see. So I think it's just more so about just making sure that the information is out there. As it relates to the youth, I know me just incorporating lights, making it fun, just doing things, giving our youth something to do giving them something to be a part of has really worked. Even down to us presenting whoever comes with their bikes lit up the best, having a trophy for them. And we're looking to also incorporate the BMX portion to Roll in Peace, to be able to have these competitions where our youth can have something to work toward, to practice, to be able to have something to do, because everybody wants to be the best at something or to learn a new skill. And so those are pretty much the approaches that I've taken, just kind of seeing what are some of the things that we can find that's interesting and fun and engaging, and implementing that.
I would like to add, Linda and everyone, that it is very, very important that the main reason to increase ridership in cities, not only for women, but as well for people in every age and gender, would be to ride safely and to increase safety on the streets. So this is, as I was saying in the presentation, this is the other pandemic that we still have, and it's still increasing every day. And it's very, for me, it's very unbelievable that someone loses their life just for going to work or for going to school. And the most sadly for this reason and for this fact is that the people who lose their lives every day is the poorest one. So it's actually more unequal to the unequal situation that we are already living in our cities. So we need to build these safety environments, and this is not only by building bicycle infrastructure network, bike lanes, but as well to push to reduce speed. This is the main factor for road safety. We need to push to reduce speed on the streets and to design the streets to be safer for kids. So there are several examples around the cities in the world. In Mexico City, we have been pushing for this for the last 20 years, and there have been huge changes in the city, but it is still a very huge fight in every city in the world, because we have a very automotive car industry that dominates every policy on the street. So we need to be aware of this.
Yes, I think that's the main questions that we have on the Q&A here in Zoom is about safety, and I don't think there is like a magic card to promote safety, especially when people go out and has to face thieves. But we created the Bike to Work program because it's harder for you to get robbed when you are in a group of people. So actually we created those groups of people who go out and bike together because we knew that there were safety problems, especially for women in our city. Our program is very, very small. We just got 300,000 people last year, and it will be incredible if we could have 1 million or 2 million people riding together every day to work or to school. But I think that creating those relations and creating those solidarity links between people who bike together, it's very important. There won't be enough cameras to see all the thefts. There won't be enough policemen or women out there to protect us all. We have to protect each other as bikers, and the feminist movement in Latin America says police doesn't take care of us, we take care of us together. And I think bikers can learn from women lessons, or from the feminist movement lessons that can be applied in the way we bike together to work or to school.
Great, thank you. So on a related note, kind of going on this thread of access and inclusivity, there was a question around how has building bike culture increased ridership from people of all income levels? So if you could speak to current initiatives that I think speak to increasing access to maybe people that can't afford bikes or live in areas of the city that might not have as robust biking infrastructure. So if you can speak a little bit more about how equity is tied to some of these conversations.
We, at least in Bogota, we have a very weird thing. And as I said, 99% of the households in Bogota own a bike because bikes are very inexpensive, or you can have, you know, the range is very wide on prices to own a bike, not the same with cars. Only 30% of the households in Bogota own a car. But we do face problems getting bike lanes and bike paths to the poorest of the poorest areas in the city. 25 years ago, Bogota built one huge bike pathway, 22 or 23 kilometers from the poorest neighborhood to the industrial area. And it used to cross, you know, just land. There weren't houses, there was no development around it. And when you bike it now, the landscape has changed completely because people wanted to live near that bike path. So we actually use biking to promote development, urban development, housing development, economic development. So I think there has to be a change on the policy makers' chip, you know, to think that biking can do the same as roads can do, or metro stations can do, or bus stations can do. But I think Bogota has many, many examples on how to get it done. And again, I want to point out on the importance on having the social movement included on those decisions. We have not necessarily the best relation with the social movement as the government, but we do hear what they have to say. We knew that women were suffering harassment in one of our bike paths, and women organizations told us we need protection here. And hearing those needs made our work easier. Our leader of Ciclovia, the head of the Ciclovia program in our institution, is a woman. So she knows, and she bikes every day, and she knows how women feel confronting security and mobility in bikes through the city. And I think those things are very, very, very important.
Maybe I would like to add something, Linda and everyone. So as I was saying, mobility is a symbol of unequal access to cities everywhere. And mainly in Latin America and the Global South, it's a very huge symbol of this unequal access to cities. And we need to change that. We need to change that very fast because we are going through several social changes that it's going to explode very soon. So mobility could be as well a symbol of equal access to cities. And the great thing around active mobility is that we can provide this by a very cheap element, which could be a bicycle. And when we see the cities on the Global South, really they have around 60%, 65%, 70% of the modal share is doing only by walking or cycling. And they walk 10 kilometers to go to school with not even a breakfast in the stomach. So it is a very cheap way to provide this, but we need to fight before the unequal access to the city. And we need to provide more resources allocated to private motorized vehicles on the streets. We need to provide it to sustainable mobility. And this is a great opportunity for cities to change this in order that we are having all these kind of Marshall economical programs that are coming because of COVID-19. So we need to put these new investments into the way that they can produce more for those who need more urgently now. And in this way, for example, Ecobici, the bike sharing program in Mexico City, is the cheapest way to move within the city. Is less than 1 peso, which is really like less than 10 cents of a dollar. So it's a very cheap cheap way to move through the city, and it's linked to all the public transportation. So it's a very good way to access through the city, through the jobs, to public health, to education. And this is commonly saw as a subsidy, but it's not a subsidy, it's an investment. We are investing into the development of our citizens, of our people.
My next question, Fatal, I don't know if you wanted to address this question. My question is kind of related to this question, but I guess just speaking about equity and access to different people, I did get a few questions around just interest in learning more about your thoughts around the infrastructure needs in Inglewood than say other parts of the city. Is the solution more protected bike lanes, or as somebody that lives there and has engaged people on bikes, are the needs and just the realities, are people like, I guess, what are people interested in Englewood, and what do you see as being really important to increasing bike culture?
I think so there's you have to, I guess we have to factor in the fact that there's some people from my community don't even look at cycling as a form of maybe like transportation or getting around or going to work. Like they only look at it as a form of recreation or exercising. And due to, like, you know, the weather here in Chicago, some people would rather be in a car where they can turn the heat on in the winter or the air conditioner on in the summertime. And so also just thinking about the and people that need to get to one place from one place to another really quick, it's just easier for people to hop into a car. But when we think about the people who actually do cycle, I think about on a couple blocks from where I live on Ashland, there's a bike lane, but before they created the bike lane, it's a place where people are used to parking, and there isn't even it's not even separated. It's like a bike lane that if someone decides to park there, they can park there. And so it's like if you were riding on your bike, you literally have to go around, come out of the bike lane and go into the street, where you could possibly be risking your life to get hit by a car, and then on the very next block, the bike lane just goes away. And so just thinking about, like, how do we just create a better infrastructure around, like, how these bike lanes are created, and where do we need actual protected bike lanes on the south side of Chicago, where when you go on the north side or maybe even downtown Chicago, it's a total difference.
So you're saying that there's just a lot of different processes that need to happen to see where a protected bike lane might be useful for Englewood, or where other kind of solution might be good for your community.
Definitely.
Okay, I'll move on to another question. There's just a lot of questions. I'm trying to see what would be valuable to in the time that we have left. I had a couple questions that I think touch on the idea of how biking relates to like walking and transit. And I think there was one question where, do you see biking as a way to replace car trips, or how does it relate to also people that rely on public transit? Are we also trying to encourage people that rely on public transit to get on bikes? And I think the last question from Paola was really interesting in how, from Rodrigo's presentation, how in Bogota, it seems to be clear that there's a vision of cycling as more than just transportation, which also I think broadens the idea of what it could be in a place. So I guess that's a really broad question, but I guess if you could speak to how all these different things relate in terms of what we can see cycling as being somewhere beyond just commuting, and how it relates to all these other mobility forms.
Rodrigo, you want to go on?
I wanted to say just one thing. There is there was this question about how we can get people from public transportation to biking. And again, I speak from the experience of Bogota. Bogota is a middle-income city. Around 30% of the people lives right below poverty line. And to own a bike would be somewhere around from $50 to, you know, $10,000, depending on what kind of bike do you want to own. But every ride on a bus in Bogota is around 50 cents. So if you buy a bike and you decide to commute on a bike every day, you will, you know, see your investments level the same amount of money that you spend on public transportation in 50 days, and then you will save up around $1 daily due to the usage of bikes. And that's why we have 800,000 people commuting every day on bikes. It's because it's a cheap way to move around the city. But of course, the city has a network of bike paths and bike lanes and segregated infrastructure. But the bikers were there before we built the infrastructure. The infrastructure came after people was using a bike. And we have done many things to, for instance, use ciclovia as a way of bringing people to use bikes. Bogota is a very tight city, so you have only like 25 kilometers from the city's middle point to any corner of the city. 25 kilometers is around 18 miles, which is a very short ride if you want to do it. And if you do it by bus, it'll take you 1 hour, 1 hour 15 to you know, move around the city on each trip. But if you do it by bike, you can reduce your time also by half. So I think there is an argument on how bikes can replace public transportation or can be an option against public transportation. I was saying at the beginning of my speech that I was waiting for a little bit of rain in Bogota. It's already raining, but the 800,000 people who take the bike every day, well, you know, I just took my bike this morning. It was sunny, and then it's raining. You just have to make it out. And that's what 10% of the riders in Bogota do, is take the bike and just go out and biking. Of course, there are still security matters. There are still 50 people who die every year on bike accidents because cars do not respect bikers as they should. But as a whole, I think biking can be a very good option against public transportation.
Anyone else have anything to add?
I would like to add something really quick. And this is especially because now we think of the future of mobility, and we think on drones and flying cars and electric cars. And this is not the solution as well. We need to provide sustainable urban solution. And this is a system which is provided by public transport, but as well by a connected and very dense city. As we saw on the presentation as well, we know that the average trip distance in the United States is nearly 60% of car trips in the United States are under 5 miles. 5 miles could be a very achievable way to move with public transportation and among walking and cycling, and even with cycling for some of the people. But of course, we need to analyze what kind of if this path could be safety, if we design the city to be safety enough to doing by public transport and by walking and cycling. So this is very achievable, and we need to think of this before we think into other modern solutions.
I would just say, just thinking about my community, the people that I engage with or interact with regularly, when we think about just telling someone what's good for them, right? Or what's, you know, when I think about Rodrigo say about saving money cycling versus using public transportation, right? It just made me think about how you could tell somebody if you eat like this, or if you exercise, or if you don't smoke cigarettes, or if you don't drink or whatever, that you'll think when you tell somebody the consequences that they'll just get it, right? And they'll just be like, okay, I won't do that anymore. But the reality is people don't. And so people would rather, whether it's catch an Uber or catch the bus or whatever, they'll say, well, I don't feel like exercising, or I would rather take, you know, whatever the transportation is. And so my method of getting people to actually enjoy it is I like to use the phrase, put the medicine in the candy, right? So like all of these different things that Rolling Peace actually provides for a community, it's like they don't even know it. It's kind of like unconsciously they're coming out and doing like participating and getting all of this education and all of these other things, and don't even know that they're being exposed to these different ways of being introduced to cycling and everything that comes with it. So I just think that sometimes just directly saying, this is what makes sense, this is what makes sense for the world, you know, for you health-wise or whatever, it just sometimes it doesn't work. You almost have to trick people into doing what's best for them.
Yeah, it seems like just in hearing all of you kind of remark on this, thinking of the different ways that we can ultimately just open up different options for people to be able to not always drive their car. I think Yvonne was saying that nearly 60% of car trips in the US are under 5 miles. And I think those are really stark statistics, and whether people are on a bike or if they're using public transportation, and because cities are making it more affordable, like Rodrigo was saying, like sometimes people opt for a bike because public transportation might be too expensive. And I think those are really key parts of the conversation, how we're just opening up all these different avenues for people to be able to engage in all these mobility forms. So yeah, I think it's there's just a lot of nuance and complexity in thinking of how all these mobility forms relate and how they go back to ultimately. I think Yvonne's presentation really touched on the implications for climate change as well, and the environment, and how we really have to think deeply about sustainability in our future, in our cities. So my next question, not related to that, but related to bike culture. How do you all think about the relationship between infrastructure and bike culture? So we've talked a little bit about really specific infrastructure, like protected bike lanes, versus events like Ciclovia or Rolling Peace. How are those two things related to getting more people on bikes? Do they serve different roles? Are they both equally as important? So I'm just curious about that dynamic between infrastructure and these really massive bike events.
I don't want to go first again, but I think that goes very, very much into what we do. Again, as I said in my last answer, Ciclovia, it's a recreational, huge park where people just go out and bike and walk and etc. But one of the cool things about Ciclovia is that goes to a long shot of what the city is, and so what we've been trying to do in the last couple of years is telling people, well, just go out on Ciclovia and use your bike to go from here to the place you work, and find out that it may be time-consuming, less time-consuming, cheaper, cooler, whatever. And I think many people who use a Ciclovia has been turning to bike riding because they found out how amazing it is to bike. I'm not one of them. I do not bike. I mostly walk and use public transportation. I'm not a biker, but I know the importance of biking for people, and I know how people can get emotionally connected with biking through this kind of events. Again, as Ivan said, there are other things that we do. When I said we wanted to, we promote international events for people to be emotionally involved in biking. If you go back to Twitter over the weekend, or to Instagram over the weekend in Colombia, all you can see is Egan Bernal, because he just won the Giro d'Italia. And there is an emotional connection on also wanting to be him, and also wanting to become someone who can bike as Egan or Nairo or any other of the huge cyclists that we have. And I don't know how it happened in America with someone like Lance Armstrong in the late 90s and early 2000s, because it will be very interesting to study that, how he could connect with communities that usually do not bike, because white Americans usually go out on cars and ride cars and have cars. So it could be a very good point to study and to know how using different role models and different strategies to put people on bikes and that they can commute on bikes.
Okay, I would like to add that actually, also like Rodrigo said, I don't like to being perceived as the bike crazy person, because I am. But if we need to be like, like a community, we need to be to integrate with a lot of other things, and especially to think around the common visions and the sustainable mobility for all. So I'm not against cars, I'm not against any other motor vehicle, but I'm in favor of building sustainable cities and livable cities. And we need to create common visions in order to doing that. We need to, as well, previous to create common visions, we need to erase or trying to erase as much as possible the unequal situations that we live in cities, and especially in Latin American cities, and especially in Mexico cities. As I was saying, unequal is very common in the city. So as well, I'm not trying to make comparisons between Mexico City and Chicago or any other cities. Every city is very different. But what we know is that even if there is no a single path to achieve sustainable and active mobility, it's very clear that evidence plays a fundamental role in pointing out the best and fastest way to achieve improvements and to achieve greatest impact in the shortest possible time. And I think in that we can agree, everyone, cyclists and walkers and everyone. And from my perspective, especially in Mexico City, bike culture has been pushing for lead most of these changes in Mexico City, at least in the last 30 years. And this was by creating this community and this engagement, but also by creating awareness and a way to express social demand. As I was saying as well, this wasn't an easy process, and it's still very difficult, especially because this inequality. But cycling has been an empowering tool for communities to participate, to demand, to create. And this could be a really new democracy way to participate. And we can find another one. We can find any other modes of transport, especially active transport or whatever. But now it's the bicycle, and we can give it a chance to make this process, social process, to be better.
I would say, as simple as it sounds, well, I guess I would just ask everyone to just picture like that time where you tried to get somebody to do something that they just didn't care to do, or maybe taste a new food or something, and after they did it, they realized that it wasn't that bad, right? And that they were willing to do it again. And so again, like taking the medicine, putting the medicine in a candy approach to be able to just get people to first just get on a bike. However we get people to just get on a bike, and then to be able to have that conversation around, well, what would it take? Like, just ask people, just really engage in community with what would it take for you to ride bikes regularly, or to, or to make you feel safe, because safety is the biggest concern. And so and I'm sure that will come up 9 times out of 10. So just asking people, what would it take to make you feel safe on a bike, and just really getting a feedback from whatever community or city or country that you're in, because ultimately it's about the people, and it's going to be tailored and it's going to be different, whatever region, according to whatever region you're in. So I would just say, however we can get people to get on bikes, and then begin to facilitate those conversations on how do we keep them on bikes and get the feedback from them.
Thank you. So we're about to wrap up. So I just wanted to provide one last question as a closer. I'll keep it simple and hopefully offer a nice way to share any closing remarks. So for all of you, what are your aspirations or hopes for your city or your community in terms of biking in the near or distant future? So you can kind of go wherever you'd like.
I would say I'm definitely just looking forward to improving safety in my community across the city of Chicago, and hopefully that spreads across the world. I'm looking forward to getting more people on bikes to understand the importance of just health, and maybe saving $1, and along with some other things, and just understanding like all of the opportunities that I didn't even realize that Rolling Peace would bring. And so just really just looking forward to a time where, whatever challenges and barriers that we face, that we can overcome those things and work together with our local elected officials and policymakers around just how do we, make the city and make the world and our environment and communities safer to actually even ride or cycle in. And so I'm just looking forward to just being a part of that work and continuing to build with like-minded individuals and, get the work done. So ultimately, that's what it's all about, just doing the work.
Yeah, maybe I would like to add that open street programs are great exactly because of that, because it's not only the bike vision, it's the vision of a city where we can play, where we can share the road and the space and the public space, where we can build visions in our neighborhoods to create engagement and to create this vision or on what we want to live in and what we need to take actions on. So my advice to Chicago and to many other cities in the world is to take cycling and active mobility in general as the opportunity to fight and overcome climate change, but also, and maybe to more important scale, to create livable neighborhoods and cities. And this could be the chance in this decade that we can change the way we transport ourselves from being a problem to become part of the solution. So that would be my main comment. Thank you.
The question was what I expected from my city in the next years. I hope that in the last 10 years, Bogota has doubled the ridership of bike from 5% to 10. And I hope by 2030, we can achieve our goal of having 30% of commuters in bikes or active mobility, but especially bikes. So that's the thing that the city has to concentrate on to create a safer environment for all people, to have a city more adapted to climate change and a city that is more livable to all.
Thank you so much. I think we'll transition to Audrey to close us out.
Yes, thank you so much, Linda, Fatal, Ivan, Rodrigo. This has been such a great conversation. And on behalf of MPC, I want to thank you for all your contributions and your leadership in biking and urban planning and research and safety. We hope you learned a lot and carry some of these lessons forward. We want to remind you that the link to a recording will be provided in an email following up on this event. And we'll also include some of the important resources that were shared today. So thank you so much for being here. This has been great, and go out and ride on World Bicycle Day today. Thank you.
Bye.